Rewind the dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly, as we hear from Jon and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, everybody. It is Jon, Pollock, and Wai Ting. It is Rewind-A-Dynamite for Wednesday night, December the 20th. Hello, Wai.
Hi, Jon. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Are you excited to talk to me?
Of course. As always. Why?
I feel you and I have been talking together for a long time this week, but I can always do with some more Wai Ting.
What are you talking about? I mean, last we spoke was Monday night. Are you
well, you know what? Sometimes we text, sometimes we call each other and just shoot the breeze.
It's almost as if we've spoken, like we were maybe recording a 6-hour show this week.
I don't even want to guess. What's going to be coming down. It's going to break people's phones on Christmas Eve. But yes, the Christmas show is coming. That means the jingle contest is coming. And I'm looking at my watch, and folks, you've got about 10 hours left to get your jingle in by noon Eastern on Thursday. Forum.postwrestling.com is where you can submit your jingle, and it will be played on the Christmas show. And I think maybe we'll scrounge together the Christmas prize pack, i.e. I'm cleaning out my basement, and maybe we'll just send off some random stuff.
Prizes from the personal collection of Jon Pollock.
Well, I don't know.
Wow.
The drawback to my reading frenzy is that I really like buying books, but dude, I'm running out of room to put all of these books. Like, if you could see, like, every shelf is covered with books.
Right. So how are you going to choose what to give away? The books you don't want, or like you don't want to just give crap away.
I'm not. No. It would be good stuff. It'd just be stuff I don't have room for. Like, I have a bunch of posters here. We'll figure out something. I feel we should give something to the winner.
Well, obviously, yes, as we do every year. But maybe this year we can actually announce the prizes.
Do they want a CD player? Do they want a carpet? No, we'll find out. You know, this is the toughest part of the year for my reading hobby. This is when it really does become a chore because it's all strategic at this point. I've decided I'm not looking at my number until the last day of the year to figure out how many books I read this year. So I am at this point now. It is December 20th. I think I can squeeze in 2 books before the end of the year. But this is not about pleasure reading. This is purely about getting that number up. So I'm looking at what will give me some kind of enjoyment to read. That's also a manageable read in this time to get. And I don't cut corners. I don't read like 120-page books. Like, it's a real full-length book.
So what's your target, and where are you at so far?
I don't honestly know where I'm at because I haven't checked since around October. My goal was, like, at the beginning of the year, it was 1 book per week. So I'm hoping to hit 52.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I feel confident I'm in striking range of that, but I honestly, honest to God, don't know. And I've had some pretty solid months, so we will see. We'll see how this one turns out.
Keep us updated. That's a very lofty goal. I think I'm at 2, so you've already beaten me.
Well, you know what? Maybe double your total in 2024.
You know what? I have room for growth. Absolutely. I like.
Before we get, I'll save someone the super chat. What 2 books have you read this year?
I read, actually, it might be a bit of a lie. I mean, honestly, I'm not really keeping track myself. I read Mox, and I've read several Beatles books, actually. So
it might be more than 2 this year.
Maybe a parenting book in there as well. Like, I'm honestly not really keeping track, but my retention is very bad, so it feels like 2.
Okay. Well, maybe it can be a goal for next year. Wai. Hit 10.
Better retention.
Hit 10.
Yeah. How many of the 52 are you able to remember, I guess, by the end of the year?
I just read. You asked me before about reading fiction books, and I typically don't read fiction, but I just read this incredible, like, murder mystery book. I was a little disappointed that it ended. It is called The 620 Man. Okay, if you want to look this up, Great book.
It's not about a Ricochet.
The 620 man. No, this is about the train he takes in the morning, and then everyone at his firm starts to die around him, and he's going to get framed for this murder. It's crazy. I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and then I looked up. This guy's written like 75 books, so I might check out some other ones. But I mean, I could tell you great things about that book. I don't think you would care.
Of course,
yeah. My retention, I would say, is pretty good. But like if I'm reading something where it is for like work purposes or something, like I'm usually reading and taking notes as I am reading it. So it is a bit of a like homework assignment almost.
But homework you enjoy
on stats and information, and just it's all gonna sit in my head. I do need to like write things out.
Wow, you really are a machine. It's very impressive.
You mispronounced nerd, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
Respect it. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I took time out. I took an hour and 40 minutes away from reading time on Tuesday to listen to the Year Ender for the Wellness Policy. Terrific show. Some great calls to cap off another year on the Post Wrestling Cafe. And
thank you.
Great show. Much. Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, like, every year at this point now, I think it's our third time that we've done it. At the end of the year for the Wellness Policy, we don't really have any topics, and we just invite the space to either talk amongst ourselves or open the floor to people that regularly listen. And we, as always, had some really tremendous calls. So I enjoyed the 2 hours that we got to chat with everybody in the Post Wrestling audience. So you can find that podcast right now at postwrestlingcafe.com for free, or go to youtube.com/postwrestling.
Well, I enjoyed listening. I was tempted to call in.
I can't believe you listen.
I do. I was working yesterday. I was like typing up stuff, and it was nice. Like, there's not too many shows I can listen to and work at the same time, but you guys, you're all very soothing, and it's just like it's like a lean back listen. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not at the edge of my seat to like transcribe your answers or anything like that. So it's just like a nice calm. It's like rain sounds, but spoken word.
I think that's exactly the goal. Yeah. When we sit down, we say we want to sound like rain.
Especially Neil. Yes. Neil is just he is yes, I think so.
Rain sounds would be how I would rainforest cafe sounds maybe would be how I would describe Jordan. Yeah.
Well, I don't know what elements you might associate with Pollock and Thurston, but today we had Irv Mushnick on the show, who long time a journalist, not just in professional wrestling, but he has written several excellent books. I mean, when you look at the Nancy Argentino case, I would say he was at the forefront of keeping that case going and Nancy Argentino's story alive. And then, the Allentown Morning Call doing a big look into that case back in 2013. He has written books on Chris Benoit and Nancy Benoit with the murder suicides in 2007, and wrote this significant feature that, I mean, I've gone back and read many times over the years. This was on the Von Erich family back in 1988 that he wrote for Penthouse magazine. So this was, when people say that I'm reading this I read Penthouse for the articles. I mean, this is the real deal here. If I was, covering stuff in 1988, I would have to go and buy Penthouse magazine to read this article. But it was a great feature on the Von Erichs and kind of exposed the mythology that had been created about this family and many of the cracks that had formed. And this is at a point, that article was written before all of the death toll had really been felt. This was after David's death. This was after Kerry's motorcycle accident, but while he was still alive, and after Mike's death, but preceded Chris's death in 91 and then Kerry's death in 1993. So it was great to have Irv Mushnick on the show, just someone I've followed for a long time, read a lot of his work. And yeah, he had a chance to actually see the movie this past week. And we did not really go into specifics on the movie because I know most people have not gotten to see it yet. But that show is up now if you want to check it out. And next week, do we want to share our plans for the Iron Claw?
Yeah, I think so. Sure.
So next week, we are not going to be doing our full slate of shows with no Raw and no SmackDown, at least new episodes to review. We are not going to be doing shows those nights. However, we're going to double up next Wednesday night. We will do Rewind-A-Dynamite, and then we are going to jump out of this room and into the Post Wrestling Cafe, and we are going to be reviewing the Iron Claw. And that will be our chance to go through our thoughts on the film, and it will give people maybe some time to see the movie over the next week. Once it is out, you can see that the cast, they are doing tons of media. They were on the Today Show. I saw Jeremy Allen White on Seth Meyers the other night. I mean, they're doing a lot of big media, so it is getting a pretty significant push. And I'm very curious to see what the word of mouth is, because I think it's going to be pretty strong from this weekend, where it doesn't seem like it's the craziest weekend either in terms of film competition this weekend.
It's true, but I find it a bit of an odd weekend. I mean, I imagine it was strategically, chosen for this weekend, but I imagine everybody would also have family plans. So how much time does that give people to go out to watch the movies? Curious to see how it performs.
Yes. So we'll chat about that next Wednesday on the Double Shot for members at postwrestlingcafe.com. On that note, is there Ask Away on Thursday? Last thing, and then we will move on to the news. But we will be doing our final mailbag show on Thursday for the year. So go up to forum.postwrestling.com. This is your last call to get your questions in. We will answer all of them. So go to the forum or memo.fm/postwrestling, and that show will be coming out for all cafe members. The final mailbag of the year. It's been a tremendous year of mailbag questions,
as always, and we've received actually quite a few voice memos, and that's free for everybody to submit, even if you're not a cafe patron. So memo.fm/postwrestling. We'd love to hear whatever you want to ask.
Yes, within reason.
Yeah.
Let us move on to some news items, and coming up later, we're also going to be giving away some tickets to the Iron Claw. If you are in Canada, that's your only requirement. But let's talk first about CJ Perry and just do an update on her since we last spoke with you on Monday night. So she underwent surgery, seemed to go well. She posted a photo after the operation. And then today she posted a brief message on Instagram and just gave some information in terms of how this happened. And this is just such a freak thing to happen. But she developed an infection in her finger after a small splinter entered her finger. This was last Wednesday at Dynamite in Arlington. So, I mean, God, like, who has not ever encountered a splinter? And this just seems like the odds of this happening just seem so incredibly tiny. And if you've seen the photos, like, it's just insane and spread to her arm. So she hasn't really commented on exactly what the procedure, how it went, or what the what the recovery period is for something like this, but hopefully they have caught it. Look, whenever you're hearing something that is spreading to the arm, it comes very concerning. She said, like, this could have been fatal. Like, this is like nothing to just take lightly in any sense. She's extremely lucky.
Very much so. And incredibly scary, and maybe a reminder that, hey, like, something that could feel small, anything is possible, and this was very unfortunate. I hope she's kind of out of the worst of it. It certainly made me think twice about making sure that a little cut that I might have from, I don't know, slicing up an apple, that I get that properly washed and maybe even bandaged. You never really know, and unfortunately she was one of the unlucky ones with this.
There is a emerging story. This came from Axios, and it's somewhat pro wrestling adjacent, but dealing with some significantly larger entities. And they are reporting that Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount Global have recently had merger discussions. And Axios reports that David Zaslav, who is the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, known colloquially within the professional wrestling community as Mr. Zaslav, as Tony Khan has referred to him as, and Bob Backish of Paramount, they met this past Tuesday in New York City. And the site notes that WBD currently holds a market value of about $29 billion, while Paramount Global just over $10 billion.
Oh, that's it, eh?
They have had a very rough run of things, and that's probably why they are in these merger discussions. But Axios also mentioned that Zaslav has met with Sherry Redstone, who is the owner of National Amusements. They are the parent company of Paramount. They have a significant amount of debt that Paramount is in. But the interesting aspect to this is that there have been all these discussions about the potential of Warner Brothers Discovery and NBC Universal merging. So Alex Sherman over at CNBC has written his own analysis of this, and he is using the analogy of kind of a love triangle here, and is Warner Brothers Discovery trying to get the attention of NBC Universal by going and asking another girl out, in the case of this being Paramount Global. So this is how major billion-dollar conglomerates work, way in terms of these meetings, these not so clandestine meetings. And I mean, in a larger sense, you know, you have some real significant media heavyweights that are in talks to merging. And when we're mentioning Warner Brothers Discovery and NBC Universal, obviously you can understand why there is, you know, some level of connective tissue here with professional wrestling, when these are the two major entities that are going to be in the midst of renewal talks and the home of these two major companies.
Is this really just a continuation of, you know, the eventuality of every company falling under one umbrella?
Well, not if, I mean, there is the thought of, like, with Warner Brothers Discovery and NBC Universal, like, just the idea, could one of these mergers go through just because of that thought of the amount of concentration that you're talking about when you have multiple cable networks and all of it, you know, just less options and so much media consolidation. But I mean, typically it's very rare you see a lot of pushbacks on these mergers, and I don't think the consumer, it's for the better.
No, nor the employees, nor the industries. I mean, typically, as we've learned this year, mergers come with layoffs, decreased competition, and potentially huge ramifications for the wrestling world, of course.
If the margins are diluted, that is a cause for finding redundancy.
Yes.
So another interesting note is that on Thursday, it will be day number 91 after the last round of WWE cuts. And I just wanted to list off here. These were the main roster performers that were let go. There were obviously others at the NXT and Performance Center level, but those typically are 30-day non-competes. But among the names that would be free to enter the market as of Thursday would include Mustafa Ali, Dolph Ziggler, Shelton Benjamin, Rick Boogs, Dana Brooke, Aaliyah, Top Dollar, Elias, Rick Moss, Emma, Mace/Masse, Mansoir, Shanky, and Matt Riddle, who was also part of these rounds of cuts. And I think obviously you're looking at names like Mustafa Ali and Dolph Ziggler, but I mean, in terms of star power, I mean, Matt Riddle is going to be a very interesting case of what interest or lack thereof there is among different wrestling promotions. He has floated already that he has had talks with MMA promotions without naming any, and certainly seems open to the idea of fighting again. And there was a poster going around where he is on this poster for MLW's next show on January 6th for a match with Jacob Fatu, although MLW has not officially announced that, but that was a poster that was going around as well. But I mean, just starting with a Matt Riddle, you know, history would dictate, way, that if you have star power, there is going to be interest in you. But with Matt Riddle is going to come a lot of scrutiny for companies that get into business with him. And I think that's what these promotions are going to be weighing. Is that something that we're just going to accept and hope that we can just battle through some negativity because this is a big star? Or is it just going to be a company stating we just don't want to go this direction and have to go through those that level of scrutiny?
Yeah. I mean, the market will really dictate it. There's certainly going to be blowback. There's going to be criticism. Is it to a level that will negatively affect the business of whoever chooses to, you know, hire somebody like a Matt Riddle, a controversial figure like a Matt Riddle? You know, for a local indie that's looking to, I don't know, fill maybe 50 people, you know, into a room, I don't think it'll really kind of affect anything. But for a company like MLW that I think relies on a lot of goodwill on like a national level, and I think online buzz, really, this could be potentially a pretty negative look for them. But again, it depends on, I think, audience reception. And at this point, I think it's still a bit too early. I haven't certainly seen any sort of clamoring for people wanting to see Matt Riddle back on the scene or in any sort of like, big potential, I don't know, series of matches or dream matches. So yeah, this one's a bit more of a risk, I would say.
I ultimately see him landing somewhere. I mean, I just like history is pretty much undefeated when it comes to that. And the idea of a company that, yes, there will be backlash in the immediate, but in time that will die down and it will just become, it's the idea that you get through the beginning and then this person just becomes part of your roster. But it is a balancing act, especially when you're talking with like smaller companies. If it's going to cost you fans going to your shows, I mean, that's ultimately the fan has the power to dictate if they want to support a company or not. And I have no problem with that. That's how it should be. If you do not feel like you want to support a company, you don't have to. The company is going to rely on the fact that you are ultimately not going to take that stand, even if you're upset with the decision. But he's certainly an interesting one here and definitely the biggest star of the bunch. Mustafa Ali and Dolph Ziggler are interesting ones. I would peg them as, I mean, it comes down to what a Dolph Ziggler wants. I think he could have a real great run a la Matt Cardona of just going to many different companies. Maybe he doesn't have the desire to sign a contract somewhere and just sort of make his schedule. I think he'll get some really good payoffs at first. And if he's really savvy to the independent scene, he'll do very well. And Mustafa Ali, I think he's in a great position to just hit the indies. And I would state that he may be the favorite in terms of like how many AEW contracts are offered to this class of free agents. Ali would be on that list for me. I could certainly see that level of interest if he wants that.
With Ali, I think we may, find an answer as early as tomorrow at 12:21, as Ali has been on social media and teased something for December the 21st at 12:21.
Maybe he'll release a list.
Time. Could be. Who knows? So we shall see. I mean, we'll probably have a very clear indication of where we'll next see him. I agree with you. I think he's the one with maybe the most potential to succeed in this sort of, I don't know, indie professional wrestling landscape. I guess, yeah, we're including AEW as well. I think Dolph Ziggler is a name that I can certainly, I wouldn't be that surprised if, like, an AEW decided to pick him up. The idea of him going into the indies and maybe having like a Matt Cardona type of run is something that's a bit tougher for me to predict, just because I don't know if I've necessarily seen that desire throughout his entire I don't know tenure in the WWE. He never to me has felt like somebody who's been all that dissatisfied with maybe the last years of his status in the WWE. He to me has come across like a guy who's been kind of comfortable, collecting that paycheck despite being booked in like a pretty nothing sort of situation. So does he have the desire to work for far less money, doing much, more physical and potentially violent styles of matches? I mean, he could prove us wrong.
And probably if he did have some really great earning years. When you're talking about a guy who was there since 04, 05, he was in their developmental system. I mean, he had some very big years on the main roster as well. And then the other ones are, I'm always interested in the ones who have primarily only been inside of the WWE system. When you look at a Rick Boogs, a Dana Brooke, who are some others, Elias, Shanky,
Masay Mansour already, making moves. They seem to be like two of the more hungry ones that you might be hearing from.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like, listen, you have a Mustafa Ali who it's like he came up through the indies. He knows what to expect. And for others, it might be a look at like, man, I'm now off Broadway and I'm going to a community theater. And that's a hard mental adjustment for some to make when, you're going from one setting to the other. And then Shelton Benjamin, here's a guy who is 48 years old. And I think there will be interest in a Shelton Benjamin. I guess I guess we'll see what the market would dictate for a Shelton Benjamin. And I think it comes at a time where TNA seems to be in a bit of a more aggressive mode, and we shouldn't discount them from the mix. And if I was any of these people, I would be looking at TNA, even if it was not the same level of money that I might be able to get elsewhere. In terms of having a spotlight and go there for a year, I think TNA could be really beneficial for some of these people. Like Riddick Moss is someone, he could do really well for himself if he finds the right setting.
Moss and Emma. I mean, I could see those two, heading as a pair to Impact Wrestling, or sorry, TNA. Or I mean, there's a lot of room for talents to flourish creatively, and also as in ring prospects. It's a much smaller stage than what AEW could provide, but people do break out. Like you do hear buzz about certain people from Impact, so it's a chance.
And then Shanky, the big one.
Could be the biggest signing in TNA history.
It could be. It could
among
be.
one of
the literal one. AEW Revolution, the latest update as of Tuesday afternoon from WrestleTix, 12,379 tickets distributed. So tickets continuing to move at a really nice rate for the March 3rd event. And I did look this up. So the wrestling attendance record at the Greensboro Coliseum was WWF Unforgiven in April of 1998, which topped one of the Starcades, I believe, from 86. And the Unforgiven show did 21,427 in the building and 20,268 paid. So that's with certainly a different stage setup when we're talking about a WWF show from 1998. I don't know what the configuration is going to be for AEW of what they can max out, but yeah, time will tell once we, if they continue at this rate to see how high they can get. That seems ambitious to be getting that high. And I don't even know if they could end up fitting 20,000 in there, but I would think conservatively that they could probably, if you're at 12 now, I would say 17 to 18 would be something to aim for once you have an opponent and the real build for this card, which I think is the momentum will be very significant in the week to 10 days before.
I totally agree. I think without even having anything but Sting having his retirement match announced, you're already doing this much. I think it's already a success, just based off of this first day or first week sale, and without even a storyline.
This could be their number 2 show of the year.
I was going to ask on pay-per-view, where do you see this ranking among AEW's calendar year? Just in terms of international success.
If they top 15,000, the only thing that's going to compete is I would say if they do another big pay-per-view in Toronto at the Scotiabank Arena, they could top it. But yeah, at worst, this is going to be 4th for the year, most likely, not knowing what buildings they're booking and what they're going to have, but I'm pretty confident this is going to be among their most successful shows of 2024.
And if you're Tony, I'm sure at this point going forward, you're going to use Sting, pretty often, but in very safe, sparing situations, because you definitely don't want to risk any. Do we even see a dive? Or maybe on a pay-per-view, maybe he's not on World's End, so we're not going to see him there. And this is the next pay-per-view, right? So do we have justification for a Sting dive between now and Revolution?
There really is not that reason, unless you want to promote maybe Sting's final match on television or something like that.
You promote Sting's final dive.
Okay, Sting's final dive. Well, you probably have to pay for that one. That's going to come in Greensboro. Right. Collision on Saturday night did 457,000 viewers, a 0.15 in the 18 to 49 demo. So it was pretty much comparable to the week prior. They were negligible difference in audience and up 4% in the 18 to 49 demo. So this was going against a bunch of college football games, while the previous week was going against Deadline. So number one, that Collision show held up really well against Deadline, and they stayed consistent for this past Saturday night's event. Raw on Monday night did 1,562,000 viewers and a 0.47 in the demo. So they were up 7% in viewership, up 2% in the demo. And what was interesting here is that last week they were going against 2 Monday Night Football games at the same time. This week they were against 1 game. However, the combined audience last week was only 300,000 viewers larger than the 1 game this week. So it's not like we had all these different football fans watching different games last week. It seemed that everyone who watched Monday night, they just came back and they watched the 1 game this week over the different networks.
Okay.
So there you have it. A cool 19 million. Nice if you can appeal. But they stayed they had their 3rd hour drop, but not a gigantic one. And in the 18 to 49, they had a 5% drop throughout the show. So it was pretty consistent show in terms of attracting people. And I would say for a show that number one had a football game against it and no CM Punk on the show, this was a pretty good number during football season. And the last one was NXT on Tuesday. This was the taped show that did 641,000 viewers and a 0.17. So with all the spoilers out, ruining this show, destroying any interest in this show, it meant a 6% drop from last week's live show. That was the difference, 6%. So
yeah, I don't think it means a whole lot.
Did you see any of NXT?
I did not, but I saw the angle involving Ridge and Ilja Dragunov.
Did you have any thoughts on the angle, how it was executed?
I certainly saw a lot of controversy from people debating about whether or not it's tasteful, to essentially use like a real life situation of Ridge Holland and Big E and turning that into Ridge Holland's character. For me, I feel like it's fair to take a point of reality and to dramatize it. I don't think it was like, for me watching it, I never felt like it was real. Like to me, it maintained like sort of like the illusion of like this being a form of fiction. I just didn't have that negative of a feeling to it.
Yeah, you? I'm more similar to you. I mean, watching it, I'm like, you're supposed to think of Big E. I can't say I was watching this and not thinking about that. There was also the Elton Prince injury as well that he was involved with. And I think that's going to be the story. Like, here is this guy that is not aiming to injure people, but this has happened to him. Number two, I could not fathom that this is happening without Big E's acknowledgement and sign off on it. I think that would be a different case if this was if he was not aware of this. And yeah, I didn't have the issue. Like, I can see how people can connect to something that was traumatizing. If you watched it, you're a fan of Big E, and I mean, there's a chance that this man's career is over now that we are coming up on nearly 2 years since the injury. But I think you can do a story involving Ridge Holland that does not have to be a tasteless or exploitive one. And I think there is sort of that knee jerk when you're watching these angles that is the direction these can go. But I did not feel that on Tuesday. All right, there you go. Those are your ratings, notes, and news. So we're going to take a short timeout. And then on the other side, we are going to be giving away tickets to go see the Iron Claw. So stay tuned and get set as we hook you up with tickets to the Iron Claw.
It is 2024, and tracking technology from advertisers, ISPs, and hackers is getting more sophisticated than many of us can understand. Something you can do to give yourself a bit more peace of mind this year is to protect your browsing by investing in a trusted VPN like NordVPN. Voted Best VPN for Privacy of 2023 by Security.org, Nord is one of the most established and reputable VPN providers in the field. NordVPN is also something I use every day to access geo-blocked online streaming services like AEW+. By far the best way of watching AEW programming commercial-free with on-demand access to AEW's entire TV archive. But perhaps the most value I've gained from using Nord has been the ability to unlock cheaper prices to online content from other parts of the world. Plus, when you sign up at nordvpn.com/postwrestling, you get 4 bonus months on top of all 2-year plans. That works out to $2.88 a month, so it's already paid for itself several times over. Again, $2.88 a month when you sign up at nordvpn.com/postwrestling. Check the link in the show description. Sign up with code postwrestling, get yourself some bonus months, and let NordVPN know you found them through us.
And now, who is ready to go see the Iron Claw? Because we have 3 pairs of tickets to give away. The only qualifier is that you have to be able to get to a Cineplex theater in Canada. So we don't even require you to have citizenship and proof. As long as you can get across the border and make it to a Cineplex, you're more than welcome to enter this contest and have your chance to go see the Iron Claw. Why you would be traveling cross country to see this show? Well, I mean, it's always better in Canada. Yeah.
You know how expensive it is to go to the theaters these days, John? Okay, if somebody from Brazil wanted to go see the Iron Claw, I mean, it might make as much sense to buy a pair of plane tickets to get to a Cineplex theater in Canada to watch this movie for free, because we're giving away 3 pairs of tickets to see the Iron Claw at any Cineplex theater in Canada during its theatrical run. So you can redeem these vouchers for any time and date when the Iron Claw is in theaters. And all we want to do is ask you a question. What is your most memorable wrestling experience of 2023? Please also state where you're from, and you can enter your answers in the Rewind-A-Dynamite podcast post at forum.postwrestling.com. So where you usually see this podcast posted, simply leave a comment under there. Again, we're asking you to tell us your most memorable wrestling experience of 2023. The contest is only open for 24 hours. So Thursday, 10 p.m. Eastern time is when we will announce a winner. 3 winners with the best answers will be notified through the forum direct messages as well as their associated email. And we would like to thank the Taro Group for supplying the tickets. Go see Elevation Pictures movie The Iron Claw, based on the true story of the inseparable Von Erich brothers, in theaters this Friday, December 22nd.
And on that note, in addition to the chat we did with Irv Mushnick earlier today, and next week, Wai and I will do our review of The Iron Claw. I'm also scheduled to chat with the director, Sean Durkin, with that interview scheduled to come out on Friday. So unless I get thrown a curveball, you can look forward to that on Friday once the film is out. So there you go. The Iron Claw, covered from all different angles.
I'm looking forward to that interview a whole lot.
Let's move on over to Dynamite, the Holiday Bash at the Paycom Center in Oklahoma City. Over 4,000 people, or I should say tickets distributed, according to WrestleTix. And man, there's no traditional opening, no pyro, boom. It's Swerve's entrance. We're not wasting any time. We are getting right into the final round robin matches in the Gold League, with Swerve Strickland taking on Roosh, with Swerve at 9 points and Roosh with 6. And they are battling way for the modern American Triple Crown, as Excalibur referred to it as. I hope that is not going to be the full name of this thing, because that's a mouthful.
Right. Was there a non-modern American Triple Crown of note?
The throwback American Triple Crown. The modern American Triple Crown.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a workaround. Maybe Triple Crown. Can they not just call it Triple Crown? I don't know. Roosh has got his quad taped up. Swerve has his right shoulder taped. So those would be the targets of each individual. And we saw Swerve delivering a German suplex on the floor. We go through the picture-in-picture break, and Swerve takes a German onto the shoulder. And then Swerve lands his own double boot. Both men go down. And then the bull's horns is set up by Roosh, but his knee buckles. So Swerve goes to the single leg crab. And at this point, man, this audience, they were already in this kind of a setting pro Swerve, but as the match continued, he worked as the babyface, and the audience, it was like they had permission to just go nuts for Swerve, and it just grew and grew throughout the match. They're fighting on the edge of the apron, and Swerve runs into a belly-to-belly and takes a big fall to the floor, further injuring the shoulder, and Roosh misses a senton off the top, so Swerve climbs up, 450 splash, but Roosh kicks out at 1, huge response to that. Rolling flatliner by Swerve, rotates to the brainbuster. Crowd is getting very animated. And then he hits the house call, climbs to the top, and he waits. He waits for the crowd to get to their feet, hits the Swerve stomp as the crowd is chanting his name, and he wins in 14 minutes and 53 seconds. And this place goes nuts as Swerve wins and moves to 4-1 and 12 points.
Very good match, I thought. You know, as I think all their performances have been thus far for Roosh and Swerve. I thought there was some really good storytelling here, taking advantage of this being the final match of this round robin section of the tournament with their established injuries. I mean, it shows you, first of all, the difficulty of the tournament, and it automatically gives you a set of stories for the match. I also felt like, I mean, essentially you have 2 baby faces in this match with Roosh and also with Swerve, who really is a baby face at this point. And I thought both of them used their injuries to their advantage to elicit a good amount of sympathy. It's a match that I thought totally worked.
I thought the crowd really helped this one, and Swerve is just continues to break through as this big star on the horizon for the company. And what I liked about all of the matches tonight, I mean, even Mark Briscoe and Jay Lethal, it still meant something. Like there was still something to fight for all 6 of these guys. And for the other 2 matches, like there were tons of stakes involved, because this was going to paint the picture for the semifinals next week. So I found this was like, they put a lot of work into this tournament, and now you're at the end of it, and sort of the tournament, the storytelling has provided you this foundation to just be really engaged in who was going to win, who was going to lose, and the different scenarios laid out. So they explain with Swerve winning that if Moxley wins or draws with Jay White tonight, then him and Swerve advance to next week's semifinal. If Jay White wins, there will be a 3-way tie, and they explain it will just be a triple threat in the semifinal next week. So regardless, Moxley is in the semifinal next week. It will just be a triple threat, and the winner would advance to the final.
Did they actually say a triple threat at this point in the show? They already told you?
I don't know if it was this early. I actually had a few like audio cutouts that I saw other people having as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, I did too. Like
Yeah.
Fight didn't even like watching it there. I didn't even get to see this graphic. So anyway, whatever. Like I love the fact that they gave you this even, you know. How often, John, have we watched the G1 and it's really just kind of up to the viewer and Chris Samsa, you know, to really kind of spell out those scenarios, and Kevin Kelly and Chris Charlton, of course. But graphically, you never kind of got this sort of like visual support from watching the G1. So I was really happy to see, like, you know, English speaking broadcast that like AEW be able to just kind of guide the viewer along and to spell out what could have been a pretty difficult situation heading into these finals. This is what you need to watch for. This is the outcome that we're all anticipating, and this is what happens if X beats X.
So a really good match between Swerve and Roosh. We go to Chris Jericho, a very somber Chris Jericho backstage setting. And he explains that Kenny Omega is in the hospital due to diverticulitis. He is going to be out of AEW indefinitely. And we won't know how long he'll be gone. Not going to be able to wrestle at World's End. But the most important thing is Kenny's health. And we're all pulling for him. You can hear the whole crowd chanting Kenny, and he acknowledges the chant and says, "We'll all be here when you're ready. The Golden Jets will resume." And he says, "Good night and goodbye, but just for now." And the whole crowd, like, they were just, you know, they took this as like this really like sentimental message from Chris Jericho. This felt like there was no shtick attached with Chris Jericho here. It was just felt like a heartfelt message for Kenny Omega, who I'm sure like he is not out of the woods yet from this whole deal that he's going through.
Yeah, totally. I thought it was like a good, classy, and very direct delivery from Jericho here, and I thought like his sort of tone effectively conveyed the gravity of the situation. And interestingly, like they didn't announce any sort of like replacement match or alternative plans for Jericho.
No, because I really felt like Sammy Guevara made the most sense to be the replacement, and they didn't. I mean, they still have 10 days until the show. They could go that direction because that would be a pretty, you know, like that's a significant match on the show. But you got no hint of it here. And maybe just for the tone of it that they want, like this was the first acknowledgement, I guess, from Jericho and really AEW on its own broadcast that maybe they just wanted to make this the news and not so much focus on the match at this point and address it next week. Mark Briscoe and Jay Lethal both are 0-4, going for their first and only points of the tournament. And they start off with a clean and even wrestling match. And then Lethal slaps Mark in the face to draw out the chops. And then these two went Kenta Kobashi, Kensuke Sasaki, and they just chopped the hell out of one another. These were lethal chops. I didn't mean to do that, but I just kind of fell into it. There's a handspring into the ropes by Lethal, knocking Briscoe to the floor. So Jay hits the tope suicida, goes for another, and he is caught and dropped on the floor so Briscoe can hit the elbow. And then he teases getting a chair involved. And then Mark hits a sliding drop kick through the ropes, grabs the chair, but not to use as a weapon, but rather to place in the ring, dives off the chair with a somersault dive to the floor. Crowd goes nuts for this.
It's important to maybe note some of the things that took place during the commercial, because for whatever reason, this crowd during the commercials, they were chanting, "We want chairs, we want chairs."
Oh.
And let's give them credit, because one of the big things I think Tony Khan wanted to establish about the C2 is the fact that you're not going to get any interference and you're not going to get any weapons usage. So they very much had, you know, the referees stick to there not being chairs allowed. And I don't know, I have to imagine this was like a point of improvisation from everybody involved in the match, but like they did like a pretty much commercial break long tease of both Jay and Mark bringing in the chair before the referee would take it back out. And that only made these crowds chant, "We want chairs," that much more. So to have it all peak with this spot of Mark not necessarily using the chair, but jumping off of it, was a very satisfying way of delivering a chair spot, but without actually doing it for this tournament.
I mean, of all the weapons to chant for, maybe the easiest to incorporate in this setting. I mean, really tough if it was "We want fire."
Thankfully, they did not.
Or a table. I mean, hard to jump off a table. in the ring to the floor.
A bit tougher, sure. Yeah.
So we get a Death Valley driver and the froggy bow by Mark, but he lands on the knees and the lethal injection gets avoided. So Jay Lethal hits the J Driller and Mark kicks out. Lethal goes for another, but then it's blocked and Mark catches the lethal injection, turns it into a burning hammer, and Mark wins with the J Driller in 13 minutes and 53 seconds. And with both men on their knees, they shake hands and Mark Briscoe gets his one win of the tournament. That I would say has been his easily highlight of the year, has been this tournament.
Yeah. If we're talking about like an actual push significant spot rather than like a singular match, I suppose, right? Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, in totality. Yes.
I think it set him up for, something of substance next year that like he, to me, really branched out. I think he was really trying to find his identity as a singles performer. And I think that this tournament did a great job of shaping that.
I think he was really just looking for the airtime. And I don't know how much he was really receiving on Dynamite itself prior to this tournament.
And he had the injury as well in the middle there.
Yeah, this gave AEW an excuse to put Mark Briscoe in a featured spot every single week on Dynamite, and he's, despite not being booked to win much beyond tonight, like he's used it to his full advantage. And there's so much of a natural charisma about the man that I think will just come out if you put him in a prominent role on TV, and everybody got to see that. So, tonight, I think, was a prime example. The fact that neither of these two were fighting for anything of consequence in this match, and the fact that this crowd was this engaged for this match and they got such a great reaction. I thought, number one, it's a testament to the both of them. It's also a testament, I think, to the booking of this tournament and to have these two sort of peak here, because yes, they weren't fighting for any sort of place in the finals, but you do have sort of the association of the Jay Briscoe tribute match attached to them. So they replayed it at the beginning of this match, and it kind of gave this match like a special feeling of like seriousness, even without any stakes attached to it. And it made Jay Lethal perform like a much more serious, I would say, babyface wrestler in this match as well. So he's coming off of like there's no points in this tournament, and at least from last week with his like little interaction with the rest of his stable, it's seeming like it's pointing towards more of a serious evolution for him. So I mean, there's storyline for Jay Lethal coming out of this. What do you do when you've hit rock bottom, went through an entire tournament and scored nothing? So I'm curious to see what they do with him.
They had highlights of MJF being inducted into the National Jewish Sports Hall of Fame from earlier this week. This was just a cool piece to show, and the shot at the end of him just walking like arm in arm with his mother down the hallway. I mean, it's just a heartwarming scene here with MJF and his mother.
He's been very busy, this man.
Doing a lot of media for this show. I mean, he's the star of this pay-per-view. I mean, in Long Island, and I mean,
well, I just mean like the red carpet premiere for the Iron Claw, of which he's an executive producer as well. I'm kind of surprised they haven't made a bigger point of that on AEW television itself. The fact that he was so involved with this movie.
I think there would have been a way to position it that he does have he legit has an executive producer credit on the film. And I don't know what maybe the original cut of the film was, but like, as you know, like his role is exceptionally quick in the film.
Yeah,
like
it's a cameo.
You might miss it if you are not really paying attention. So, I mean, there is that.
But it's the executive credit.
Well, yeah, I certainly could see them like maybe playing that up a bit more. Like it was, when the credits run, it's like his name is boom up there on its own in block letters. Like, like he's like one of the top credited names at the end of this. So. Then we had another Wardlow video who said the clock is ticking for MJF. We're getting closer and closer to his world ending. Soon the world will see him broken, and the payment for his sins cannot be delayed any longer, and he will be the one to bring the devil to his knees. So they are definitely teasing, or at least want you to be of the belief that there is some angle coming at the pay-per-view with Wardlow in some form or fashion. Not so much necessarily that he is the devil, but this is pretty heavy-handed here with like the world will be ending.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious to see what they have in store. And how Wardlow somehow intertwines with this devil thing. Because at the moment, these maybe purposefully are just kind of feeling like kind of generic tough guy segments on the surface, at least, and I hope it's not just that, and it's something a bit more complex. So We'll see. I mean, I'll be honest, like I don't really think about Wardlow after these shows at all. Like he feels so low in importance compared to everything else MJF is involved with.
Samoa Joe comes out. First of all, pretty hot crowd in Oklahoma City. Like they were into like most of the stars on this show. He states he is still seeking answers, and he goes over the different attacks by the devil. But we got to see all the footage of it, but never saw footage of MJF being attacked like everyone else. So he calls out MJF, and MJF brings up how Joe said he would protect him before the pay-per-view, and he does an impression of Samoa Joe. That was pretty good. And calling him his property, and says, you care about your property about as much as you do your diet, and says that the goons never laid a hand on you, Joe, and I don't like you, I don't trust you, and why are we waiting until December 30th? But before they can come to blows, the goons run out, and Joe and Max fight them off. They clear the ring, and then the lights go out, and the devil appears on the screen, and he too has enlisted in
subtitles
text to convey his message. Where can you go? Who can you trust? Next week, will you accept the challenge for the ROH tag titles? Are you a hero, Max?
So what are you saying? That maybe the devil doesn't speak English?
Maybe the devil is Chris Hero.
Oh, okay. Yes.
But he has booking power. So add that to the fuel of Tony Khan is the devil.
Right.
But yes, it looks like we're going to get Joe and Max teaming up next week to defend the ROH tag titles. So the devil, he does have ambitions of getting these ROH tag titles under his control.
Right. Yeah. Specifically, it sounds like two of his goons will be challenging for the championship. And
great.
I don't think the devil will be wrestling. I find it interesting that they're going to do it because we're going to have to see two of these minions actually wrestling in ring. And it's one thing
this is what they were going to do a few weeks ago when Max first injured his shoulder. They were going to do Joe and Max against two of the goons, and then that got scrapped.
Yeah, and it's one thing to have like a bunch of sort of faceless guys come out and surround them and beat them down. It's another to have them actually wrestle matches, because it's going to be potentially the biggest tell we'll have of who might be under the mask. And I don't know if they've been using the same people under these masks or not, but I have to think if there's any sort of hint about who they might be, they might give it tomorrow. Like next week. Like what moves are they going to do? What signature moves may we see that will continue to tease?
Well, every goon knows how to do a collar and elbow tie up. Right?
The most devastating move in AEW at the moment. Yeah.
So Max goes to ask Joe about teaming up, and Joe accepts on their behalf. They're going to beat their asses next week, they state. Renee is with the best friends, including Rocky Romero, who mentions losing the historic welterweight title last week to Mascara Dorada. And just out of nowhere, Orange Cassidy gives him a title shot on Rampage on Friday night, which
Rocky did say, like, Rocky says he's on a hunt for gold, but not specifically Orange Cassidy.
Orange just volunteered his gold to be the one you're after.
Yeah.
Remember when did we not get Hook and Wheeler Yuta agreeing to a FTW rules match like a while ago? Did we ever get that? Someone tell me in the chat if I'm totally blanking on this match, but I know that there was a challenge for an FTW rules match, and I don't recall it ever happening.
Right.
I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'm 90% sure it did not. Anyway.
Brian says not yet in the chat room, and I'm sure Brian's more than on top of it. So
okay, well, we're waiting. Maybe FTW rules are my time, my place. There's no limit on when I can set the match. Tony Storm comes out with Luther to join commentary and says that Taz is her favorite landlord, the human duplex machine.
Pretty funny.
Probably a t-shirt coming. Saraya takes on Riho, and Ruby Soho is watching in the back while Saraya hides behind a security guard on the floor and then lands a sucker punch. Rio then gets swung into the guardrail. We fight through the break, and then Rio comes back with a tiger feint kick and then goes for a high cross, and she nearly comes up short. And dude, Saraya had to just try and catch her coming down because this was a short high cross. And Riho just transitions to the crossface. Saraya lands a kick as Riho comes off the top, but then Riho recovers with the Northern Lights, a double stomp off the top, and then the running double knees. And it is Riho pinning Saraya in 7 minutes and 42 seconds. So it will be Toni Storm and Riho at World's End.
Yeah, rare match on TV, and I do continue to see limitations, in her in-ring style, and maybe that's just kind of supported by the fact that her appearances at this point are still so infrequent, at least in a wrestling capacity. But it was enough to provide the match to get to where they want to go. I will say it was probably below AEW standards for me, this one. I actually thought one of the highlights this week was Toni Storm on commentary. I did not find her overbearing this week. I thought her lines were actually really funny. So to me, at least this week, I feel like they found a good balance of how much shtick to maybe interject into the body of the match itself.
I think she was breaking Excalibur on a few of the lines.
She's she's legitimately hilarious.
She is not going to break in this character. Like, she is totally like committed to the act. So Toni comes down to the ring and inspects Riho and then attacks her. And Riho lands the Tiger Feint kick and makes the signal for the belt when Mariah May blasts her from behind with a belt shot. And Toni Storm is confused and looking at Mariah May, but Luther carries her away. And this was Mariah May stepping up for Toni Storm.
I guess I'm not entirely sure what what was the feeling conveyed here with the Storm and May, that Storm doesn't know her or is just surprised that she would help. Why would she?
It felt to me like this was the first time Toni Storm found some usefulness out of this woman who has just been tagging along for all this time. Like, she can actually be of some assistance to me.
Okay, and that's
how I read it from the
look.
facial expressions.
Right, interesting. Okay. So, Riho has been getting really good reactions despite really not having any sort of promo time. But the crowd loves her, and they love her simply through her in-ring performances. So she feels like a pretty good challenger, but I don't think anybody buys her winning. And part of that is because there's just been no grudge told here. We don't know Riho's motivations. The entire story has been at this point really about Toni Storm and Mariah May. They've been the ones to receive all the attention, and it's fine for TV. But I think if you're trying to get people a bit more sort of invested in a world title match, I think they need to do a bit more to tell us the personal grudge between these two, or at least convey something about why we want to see Riho win and beat Toni Storm. So they have 1 week to do that. Let's see if they do.
It would be nice to I'm sure they will do something of note on the countdown, but I don't think that's enough. It would be nice to get something more than she's won this match and is the challenger of the month. Like, something.
It just feels like another obstacle,
Then Tony Schiavone has a prepared statement from Christian Cage, who has instructed Tony to read this word for word. He insults Oklahoma City and called it a career-defining win when he beat Adam Copeland, and he has taken his protege Nick Wayne on vacation, but will return this Saturday on Collision to address Copeland's challenge for the no DQ match at World's End.
I thought this totally worked. I mean, usually they might pre-tape something with Christian, but having a statement read by Tony Schiavone, I thought really worked. It just basically told you he was too important to be here, and was a good way of, I think, generating or announcing this appearance.
I just thought there was so much more material that you could have had fun with Tony Schiavone being forced to read, making a crack about Shayna Wayne and saying just every Christianism, but Tony has to read these straight as well. But yeah, this is a fine segment. MJF and Joe are in the back, and MJF leaves Joe, and he's walking down the hallway and sees a devil mask laying on the floor in front of the Mogul Affiliates locker room. Case closed, right? This is it. It's the smoking gun. So he knocks on the Mogul Embassy's door, and Prince Nana answers the door and asks what this is about, and Swerve comes out, and we get MJF and Swerve face to face, and what ensued was maybe the best 5 minutes of spoken word dialogue on AEW programming this year.
A sign this was a trailer for maybe the big blockbuster movie that you might see from AEW Studios next year.
MJF brings up their history and riding together on the road, and Swerve calls him, yeah, you were my chauffeur, and says that MJF has been ducking him. MJF says, I've been ducking you because there are levels to this shit. And your theme song isn't on, which means your star power isn't on. Swerve brings up the famous email that William Regal sent him where he got rejected after his tryout, and then says, see, that's the difference between you and me. You do tryouts. I sign contracts. And the last person that disrespected me was hung in front of 13,000 people with a chain. And MJF retorts, solid monologue, bro. I'm impressed. MJF says, you talk about Hangman quite a lot. You better check your tone and watch your mouth. And you could take out those hand-me-down Flava Flav grills in your mouth. And jokes about how in all his interviews, Swerve is begging to be champion, which isn't a great look, and thinks you are the type of person that would frame Hangman and create a clear path towards the title, and asks him straight up if he's the devil. He says, this might be your house, but I'm the big bad wolf, and I'll blow your house down. And while I'm at it, I'll break both your arms so you can always swerve when you drive. Swerve says, I'm not the devil, but if you keep waving that title in front of me, I will bring you hell. And with that, Samoa Joe returns to see what's going on here and takes MJF off as they have business elsewhere. So let us just fast forward to the program of 2024. This was excellent.
Excellent. Very clear from this interaction that Swerve is next in line. Maybe not directly next, but he's in store for a world title program with MJF, and it seems like they're going to be treating this one like it's a big one. This first interaction between the two gave me a lot of hope for the potential of this being one of AEW's most important title programs. I thought there was incredible chemistry just from this little bit alone. You got some great lines from MJF. You got some great retorts from Swerve. It's the time, the timing is right for Swerve right now to potentially beat MJF. I think a lot of us have been saying that even before the Hangman Page match. But now especially, he is probably the most serious contender that MJF has had in quite a while. And whether or not Swerve wins this tournament, in fact, this might even give you more reason to believe he's not going to win the tournament.
I think so. And I mean, I really have no issue with we can state add the number of programs of MJF and these opponents coming after him. I really don't have an issue with this is not happening at the next pay-per-view, that we can plant this seed. Mm-hmm. But it would be before seeing this segment. I mean, this was just so great that the fact is in 10 days, you're paying for a pay-per-view that is not this match. That this, to me, this is bigger than anything they have done to promote the Joe match. And I just, if I had put this on paper, I mean, I couldn't have imagined it being this level of quality that they put out. This would be above even my expectations of a strong segment. It was a tremendous segment that I think your fan base is just wanting to fast forward to get to this, which could be several months away.
Sort of the risk you take, right? When you're trying to, juggle multiple feuds at the same time. Some are going to be anticipated more than others. I mean, do you even remember what Wardlow said after watching something like this? How excited are you for that potential program coming off of, watching this, right? That doesn't mean they shouldn't do it though. I think long-term teasing is ultimately a good thing. I feel so much anticipation for this just simply coming off of this. And we're all going to pay maybe that much more attention to Swerve now that we know that he's truly at a top main event level, next in line for a championship run.
Great segment that these two had. They followed with Roderick Strong with the Kingdom in his corner against Komander. And Strong takes over during the picture-in-picture. He's stretching Komander. And then Komander sweeps Strong on the turnbuckle, hits a Phoenix splash, and the crowd bought into his cover, but Strong kicks out. And then the Kingdom pull Roderick to the floor to avoid Komander coming off the top. So instead, he rope walks and moonsaults to all three. And as Komander goes for a springboard, he is met with a flying knee. And then one of the most impressive end of heartaches ever, because he got an extra rotation on Komander. So instead of coming down back first on the knees, he flipped and came down on his gut, on the stomach, and Strong pinned him in 9:56. fine match, but excellent finish, I thought, with the end of Heartache.
Like, this would be what you would call a filler match on this edition of Dynamite, on a show where you had your last matches of the Gold League. I mean, this had no consequence, but for a filler match, you can never go wrong with having Komander in that spot. Like, he's almost like too good in that role that might kind of like pigeonhole him into this spot, you know, like he's the guy that,
like the one thing, like, this was a great crowd. It was cool that they got into the Phoenix Splash, but I don't think anyone believes Komander is winning in any significant out. Like, he is the fall guy.
Yeah, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, Dante Martin was kind of in that role, and as a result, like, I don't know if those guys will ever, you know, get a real push because they're such like good filler guys, right? But I thought it was a great showcase for Roderick Strong as well. He really is at his best when he can do the Messiah of the backbreaker stuff with people that are either his size or smaller, and this was a great showcase for Roddy. Yeah.
So Taven and Bennett are hanging up MJF is the devil signs while Renee enters the ring to interview Roderick Strong, who has put his neck brace back on. Which I thought this was the whole thing, was that he got rid of the wheelchair and he threw the neck brace away. I thought that was the end of this, but
I think it was just a wheelchair. I feel like the neck brace, he thinks it's still I guess it's over enough with, and still a little ridiculous. You still have to sell neck strong t-shirts.
Yeah, because I'm sure they just can't keep those on the rack. He calls for Samoa, and he says it's obvious that Max is the devil. Hangman brought it up, and then he got attacked for his accusation. It's time for Samoa Joe to finally listen, and he calls Samoa Joe his best friend by proxy. I will reserve all judgment until we get the payoff to this, but boy, it better be a payoff, because I love watching Roderick in the ring. These three together, this angle, the screaming the guy's name, it has more than worn me out. It's just, I'm not into this at all.
Seems like one of the remnants of, like, you know, the sort of comedy skits of Adam Cole and MJF is this Roderick Strong in the Kingdom stuff. And the Cole injury might have, you know, outside of Roderick Strong, probably hurt the Kingdom, and sorry, outside of Adam Cole, might have hurt Roderick Strong in the Kingdom the most, because they're kind of aimless without Adam Cole. I think they're trying to really use Samoa Joe as a surrogate, but it feels so awfully forced. And even tonally, I think they're strong. Sorry, Joe and MJF are getting a little bit more serious with their interactions, and to have this sort of very campy Roderick Strong in the Kingdom vibe, it's funny. They're over, certainly, because of it, but now it kind of feels like it's overstaying its welcome, and it hasn't really evolved in a way that I think fits what it currently is.
The lineup for Saturday's Collision in San Antonio, which is the hometown of Thunder Rosa. She will return. This is her first match since August of last year. She will team with Abaddon against Julia Hart and Sky Blue. Brian Cage takes on Keith Lee. The Acclaimed and Daddy Ass defend the trios belts against Top Flight and Action Andretti. And then in Blue League matches, it's Bryan Danielson against Claudio, Brody King against Daniel Garcia, and Eddie Kingston against Andrade El Idolo. And there's way more possibilities with these six, where what is it? Everyone but Daniel Garcia is mathematically alive, I believe. And then Christian Cage will also respond to Adam Copeland's challenge. So that looks like a really strong Collision on Saturday.
Very much so. The return of Thunder Rosa,
Danielson and Claudio,
all the league matches. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Jim Ross is brought out for the main event in Oklahoma City, making his return. I'll just get it out of the way. I thought Jim Ross sounded tremendous in this main event. He came out, it felt as though, like, I don't know the full details of, like, his contract status. Obviously, he's had all of his health issues, but he's been very open about the fact he does not know what his future necessarily entails in AEW. Dude, he came out here and it was one of I think his best performances in AEW. He sounded so rejuvenated. There was no like of the one-liners or comedy stuff. It was like he added a lot to this match, and I thought he did tremendous here.
I totally agree. And I was watching this wondering if, like, I was alone in feeling it, because I just felt like I hadn't heard Jim Ross like this sort of, like, I don't know, clear in quite a while. Like, often I think his performances have kind of felt like he's trying to catch up with the rest of the team. And
I thought
tonight,
it
felt
here.
like he was totally like he felt like he was worthy of the billing of being a special attraction that you only get to hear once in a while. There was something very different in a very positive way about Jim Ross tonight.
Yeah. I thought it was very evident right from the beginning, and it continued for the whole match. He is comparing Jon Moxley to some of the Mid-South talent like Bill Watts, Dick Murdoch, Butch Reed, and then compares him to Travis Kelce. So one of the announcers asks what that would make Renee Paquette. Travis Kelce is the boyfriend of Taylor Swift.
So it would make her Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I guess that answers the question right there.
Okay.
So Moxley immediately goes for the choke, and he's got the hooks in, then abandons that for a pile driver. So it's just total like hitting the gas here out of the jump, and then goes back to the choke. And they did explain here that it would be a 3-way. So maybe this was the first time that they mentioned it, but at least by this point, this was the explanation if Jay White wins. They fought on the ramp, and then Jay White clips the knee of Jon Moxley, and this would be his focus throughout the rest of the match, attacking Jon Moxley's knee. He used a Muda lock, and then Jon Moxley gets him in the corner, starts biting him, lands a suicide dive. He continues selling the knee, and then Jay White grabs 2 chairs, and Bryce Remsburg is stopping him from getting the chair to be used as a weapon. So he throws the chair into the ring, and Bryce sees this chair that is nowhere near either man, but he now has to go take care of this chair that is like 20 feet away. And as he does that, turns his back, and Jay White uses the other chair on the knee of Jon Moxley. But that other chair was taken care of. It was not in any vicinity of either of the performers. So Bryce made sure that chair was okay.
I thought it was a pretty well executed, cheating spot, right? I mean,
if you accept that these referees are like dogs that you throw a tennis ball and they'll just naturally go, yes.
I've seen a lot worse, okay? Like stupid refereeing than something like this. Like something I could say right now is that the C2 has done a better job of making the referees feel smart compared to the G1.
I think there's a lot that we can take from this tournament, and it doesn't have to be a gigantic change to just lessening some of the what have become crutches in some AEW matches. I think that you can certainly learn from this and look at how positive this tournament has been received from people. So the chair is with all that said, I thought like this is like one of the few weapon shots that we did have in the whole tournament, and it was done. That's going to have this effect now on Moxley for the rest of the tournament. Moxley beats the count at 9 and counters a Blade Runner into the paradigm shift, and White kicks out. So then White goes back to the knee, hits a dragon screw, and then Moxley connects with a knee strike, hits the cutter, and a sleeper suplex and Uranagi by White only generate a 2 count. So Moxley hits a short arm clothesline, counters the Blade Runner, hits the stomp, and as he goes for the Death Rider, it's countered, and Jay White hits the Blade Runner, and he pins Jon Moxley in 15 minutes and 11 seconds, therefore setting up a triple threat for the Gold League semifinal next week with Jay White, Jon Moxley, and Swerve Strickland, with the winner going to the finals at the pay-per-view.
Made me eat my words, man. I didn't think they would go the 3-way route. But the fact that they're just simply, going to say top 3 finishers get to be in a match together, triple threat to determine the winner. I think it's about as simple of a way as you can to create a tiebreaker, essentially. So I guess my question is, what if it was a 4-way tie? Would it be a
4-way?
What if it was a 6-way tie?
Maybe we'll find out in the in the Blue League. I mean, they have a lot of people alive in that particular one. But no, it's it's fine. It's a little gimmicky to go the triple threat route, but I think you're trying to do multiple things here. Number one, I don't think they want Swerve losing another fall after he lost to Moxley, and I think this certainly opens things up that it would be, I mean, you can make your arguments for really any of the 3 to go to the final, but I would say that this does somewhat increase the odds of a Jay White potentially going to the final. I definitely don't discount that option, and we will see how it goes, but I think it should be an excellent match next week. I mean, you should have high expectations for this.
I think showing us the Swerve MJF interaction will probably alleviate a lot of negative reaction that might come of Swerve not winning this match next week. Because I think for a lot of people, he might have been a front runner. But at this point, I tend to agree. I think Jay might be the front runner. Just to give us maybe a heel, to oppose, whether it be a Danielson or Eddie Kingston, on the babyface side with the Blue League. So I think it's a very strong possibility. I thought it was cool. It was a good way of giving us a surprising outcome, to this round robin format while doing it pretty simply. So yeah, I'm in favor of it.
And then the show just ended with Swerve walking out. Moxley is selling his knee. And then while the camera was on Swerve, Jay White clips the knee. So you actually missed the attack, but they did focus on it after. So Moxley's going into this three-way with a banged up knee. And that's the setup for next week. I thought this was a really
and a potential out of, losing the match.
Yes.
Or not winning.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought this was a really strong Dynamite. I thought I was interested in all three of the Gold League matches, and I thought all three delivered in different ways. And man, you had a home run segment with Swerve and MJF as well on the show. I thought, the women's match was probably the weakest on the show, but I would say overall, I thought that this was they've had a very good string of shows of late. And that's including Final Battle. They're on a very good run, and I think that the tournament has been this came at a great time for AEW. I think they've done a very good job establishing it, and it's going to mean that much more next year, because I think the first one you have to call a success.
If the point of the C2 was to do a bit of rehabbing for maybe some of the criticisms of AEW not being as serious of a product, I think it's achieved that. These matches have been anticipated, and especially getting to the later rounds, I feel like they felt important, and they've really carried these shows, and the performers themselves have really delivered, I think, in almost every instance. I wouldn't say actually, some of the matches have certainly reached G1 quality, maybe not at the consistency of G1, but they are handicapped with commercial breaks and all that as well. But it's still a high level, a high standard that I think this tournament has really set. So I'd be looking forward to the next one, especially if a Will Ospreay is involved.
All right, that was Dynamite. If you want to share your thoughts, you can still get your feedback up at forum.postwrestling.com or send us a super chat. They will be open. So Wai, you direct us.
Let's go to a super chat here from Jake Olinar, the person who chose our Ultimate Fighter review that you can find out, listen to right now on Rewind-A in the Post Wrestling Cafe. Jake sends $10. Thank you for the support, Jake. He says, I had the pleasure of attending an early fan screening of The Iron Claw last Wednesday. To me, I think this is even better than The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke. Best wrestling movie I've ever seen.
Okay, there's Jake's review of the film. Thank you, Jake.
We will save our thoughts for next Wednesday on the Double Shot.
Yes, we'll put up a thread too for before next week. So if you cannot listen live, you can share your feedback, because I'm curious to hear from people once they have a chance to see it. All right, feedback to the show. We're gonna start things off with Steve Grows Weed. Seeing Swerve interact with MJF was awesome. Really impressed with their star building when it comes to Swerve. He used an attempted kidnapping / Texas death match to catapult himself into being one of the biggest badass baby faces we've had in a long time. When do you think they'll pull the trigger on his title win? Think they can hold it off to All In next summer? Well, that's number one, if you see that as the direction of putting the title on Swerve. But I would think I think that would be my choice to be the number 2 match at Revolution underneath the retirement match.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, because that pay-per-view needs a main event and Sting, a title match, and Sting won't be challenging for the championship, we're presuming.
Most likely not. Although I did not hate that scenario when I was thinking of it, of not maybe the retirement match, but along the way, Sting going for the title one time.
Yeah, you could do it. I think for TV especially, but I don't see them doing that big of a match. We don't even know if they're going to have Sting wrestle a singles match. He hasn't yet in AEW, and there'd be certainly higher expectations with the title match. I also don't think you'll get anybody buying it simply because he's not sticking around. So I don't even think you need to. I like it as a sort of second from the top, I suppose, if you want to call it that, for Revolution. Does Swerve have to win if he challenges, or can he lose?
He doesn't need to win, but I think this period is going to be very informative in terms of this guy has a ton of momentum, and I think he is going to be very much looked at as, man, is this like, to me, he is as viable a candidate to unseat MJF and run with this championship. I think he's in a great position to be that candidate. That if I'm looking at options here, like, he would be like, if Adam Cole was healthy, I would say Swerve still feels like the hotter character.
So at this point, do you think that they're still waiting for Adam Cole to be ready to take the belt off of MJF, or do you think we're moving past that possibility?
I mean, I think down to the fact that they still haven't even stripped the tag titles off MJF tells you that they want to keep this story somewhat going. And I feel like you want to hold on to this, but at the same time, their idea may have been, we get back to Wembley and it's MJF and Adam Cole again. But it's like, you can plan things out a year in advance, but you can't hold yourself to that if your audience is telling you something different. And it's not like the audience is rejecting MJF. It's more so this is just an endorsement of Swerve. And I mean, you can also get the belt back on MJF too at a later date.
Agreed.
So there's a lot of ways you can go with this. And, we're getting way too ahead months wise, but you have to be looking at who is that figure on our screen that could really break through to a larger level than of a star that we have created. And Swerve represents that to me, of just where this guy can go, the attention he can draw for you. And also does not have that ex-WWE stigma to him, even though he was somebody that was among those cuts. He feels like a completely different character in AEW that has none of the remnants of Isaiah Swerve Scott.
Oh, he feels like, much like Jon Moxley, like an evolved version of what we got to see. I mean, it helps that he didn't have that much of a run in the WWE, so he wasn't necessarily even defined by his WWE run. But in AEW, he's certainly, you never got this glimpse of the talent, that you got to see. You get to see now. Let's get to a super chat here from Andrew Brown, who sends $5 to ask. Thank you for the support, Andrew. He says, can you see WWE attempting to do a round robin tournament with the success of the Continental Classic?
I mean, Hunter has loved tournaments. I could certainly see them doing one at a time. It's an easy storytelling device that can take up multiple weeks of television. It certainly can be done. I would say, I wouldn't say it was.
Hasn't NXT attempted like a smaller scale?
Yeah, they just did one earlier this year. I would say under this management, I'd say there's a higher probability of the old way. I think the math would have just absolutely disqualified it from being. I'm serious. I'm
trying to think Vince booking a round robin tournament.
This is a guy that didn't want you referencing things that happened like a month ago because the fans would forget it. I mean, it was just, there was no way that was going to be attempted or executed in anywhere in terms of a understandable way. So yeah, I mean, I could see them doing it off the success of the Continental Classic. I mean, I don't know if this would be something that they're just, what a great idea. It's like the template has been there for years with the G1. And I mean, but yeah, it's certainly possible.
I could certainly see it. Yeah. If it's proven to, this has proven to be, I think, an effective way of not just building to potentially a new upper card or whoever wins this thing, but it's helped elevate other people. Like we talked about Mark Briscoe being one of those. I think, Roosh is one of those. I think Andrade, Brody King, are several people that have been elevated despite not, probably not winning this entire thing. So let's go to Muggin up next, who says, first off, it's good that AEW has addressed Omega's bout with diverticulitis from the jump. The Continental Classic continues to put on strong wrestling, and the Swerve Friedman interaction was terrific. That's a world title program for next year. Swerve is at a crossroads right now. Do you keep him a heel or turn him babyface, considering how over the Nana dance has gotten the last few months?
I mean, whatever his designation is, he is a babyface to the audience.
For the time being, yes, I agree. Now, okay. We all felt like MJF grabbing the hood and simply suspecting Swerve was very much like almost like a cartoonish leap of logic, right? Could it be a misdirect? And are we discounting Swerve potentially actually being the role of the devil?
No, like you can add that name to the
wouldn't.
list. I will say this: if their idea is to really just pull back Swerve and put him into this heel role, I think you're going to be actively fighting the crowd that they want to be into Swerve. Like, you've literally had this guy nearly kidnap a baby and they love this character.
Well, they are building to Swerve versus MJF. Okay. And MJF is a baby face. What are you going to do there?
I think it's one where it's like a segment like tonight where I think you're going to have your MJF fans, you're going to have your Swerve fans. And I think Tony likes leaning into that, where it's not always so defining one role or the other, that it's going to be two guys that are out there, and it's going to be like each are going to shine to their fan bases and have the crowd kind of pick their guy.
And will making Swerve the devil negate that reaction? I mean, again, we saw Swerve attempt to kidnap or threaten to kidnap Paige's baby, and I would say he went into that match certainly feeling like a heel, but still maintaining like a pretty big like reaction by the end. And even if they revealed Swerve as the devil, I think it would only serve to, you know, heat up the program first of all, and then let the audience pick who they want to win. You know, number one, does it heat up the program? And if you're trying to build to a Revolution match with Swerve and MJF, maybe revealing Swerve as a devil is the easiest way you can get to that.
It's one way to go. Like, it's certainly possible. Jordan from the Bronx: ever since TNA, Samoa Joe has become highly adept to detecting evil ninja attacks. I don't understand why the devil wants the ROH tag titles. Whatever needs to happen to finally get to the reveal needs to happen within the next 2 weeks. Swerve and MJF's interaction has confirmed that Swerve is officially elevated to the main event mix. I can see him winning the triple threat next week, but losing the grand finals. I don't want Swerve introducing yet another new AEW title. I'd rather him go all the way up to the main belt and defeating the world champion. This tournament has been a success in elevating a few people on the roster. I wonder what happens to the likes of Rush, Andrade, and Brody King when it's done. It was a great way to get them on TV weekly, but more often than not, there's a lack of follow-up with guys who start to heat up. Everyone can't get elevated at the same time, but AEW seems to be cursed with riches by having so many great talents available at any given time, but not enough room for them to be prominently featured at once. Who do you see coming out of the Blue League? My prediction is Eddie Kingston and Bryan Danielson in the final next week. I can see that being, a strong likelihood. And I mean, we went over it. I think those would be your two candidates that you would look at. And you either go for, I mean, there is a story with Eddie Kingston defending his titles to the end, but you could also have him come up short in the semifinal and still kind of have that as a story coming out of it, like Eddie Kingston losing his belts after he risks them all, and having something come out there. Like Bryan Danielson is, you have two very strong options in Danielson and Kingston, I would say, as the favorites to go on.
Maybe you get a 6-way and everybody gets into that final. Very possible as well. I think more and more, the more I really consider it, I see Eddie Kingston winning the Blue League and then ultimately winning the entire thing. Like Kingston, I mean, the story is just, it's him being noble enough and confident enough that he's giving up his own championship. I think he's going to be involved in the final decision, regardless of, who wins it. But it's the Triple Crown. And who is the biggest All Japan Pro Wrestling mark on that roster but Eddie Kingston? So all of this as a way to basically make Eddie Kingston the modern day Triple Crown champion almost feels a bit too perfect to me for them to pass up.
Yeah, so we will get both semifinals next Wednesday because there's no Collision next week because the pay-per-view is on Saturday.
Right. Okay.
Yes. So that is all the latest. So there you go, everybody. That is Rewind-A-Dynamite. Once again, a reminder to everyone that you can go to forum.postwrestling.com. We want to know, what was your favorite wrestling experience of 2023? It's free to enter. AEW Holiday Bash, December 20th, 2023 thread. Just post your most memorable wrestling experience of 2023. The 3 best answers will be contacted via direct message on the forum, and you will be off to see the Iron Claw.
And it doesn't have to be a live experience. Like, it could be anything in your life this year that was memorable, that involved professional wrestling.
All right.
Anything.
So go check that out. And as well, final day to get in your jingle submissions for the Post Wrestling Christmas show, Thursday by noon Eastern, and your questions for the Ask Away mailbag show. Everything can be done at forum.postwrestling.com. postwrestling.com. So there you go. That is it. We will be back on Thursday with Ask Away, Friday with Rewind to SmackDown, and then coming up this weekend, we have a long and winding Royal Road with WH Park and guest Rich Craich from Voices of Wrestling, Collision course coming your way, and then the Post Wrestling Christmas show drops on Sunday on Christmas Eve. Who is coming to the Christmas party? Tune in Sunday to find out. And that is it for us. Good night.